Thank you, I will think about it. I will consult and then get back to you with feedback. How often do you or your managers hear this over the phone or in a meeting? Techniques for handling objections do not work and simply irritate clients. In this video, I will explain how to get the client to tell you what they will do, to buy from you instead of raising objections. Yes, you will learn strategies that will turn clients into your ambassadors, and in some cases, make them do everything to buy specifically from you. Of course, it is very difficult to imagine how to sell without objections, because sales begin with them. Otherwise, it's like a cashier in a supermarket, a kind of salesperson with a 100% conversion rate, because there are simply no objections. But in this video, I will provide examples of phrases so that you can get closer to the reality where you can truly sell without objections, including in B2B sales. If after watching this video you still can't imagine it, recalling a client who objected to you, I am ready to pick up the phone and call your client live. Yes, this is not a joke. If your campaign is really interesting, I will set aside time to do it, and if I succeed and everyone agrees, I will post this video. Okay, enough prelude. Okay, enough prelude. Let's get to the specifics. Let's start with the objection. We already have a supplier. We are not interested in others. It arises when you offer the client equipment, a service, marketing, or anything else. What should you do to avoid hearing this objection? Imagine that you are the client and I am telling you. I assume that you already have suppliers and you are not satisfied. And perhaps you are asking yourself, what is our advantage? So why am I calling you now? What do you think if you said this phrase to your client? How would they respond to such a strange question? He will say yes and be surprised, but there will be a little intrigue and interest. And then you continue talking to the client. Before I send you a proposal via email, which will outline why this will work better, or why you will be able to save more quickly, or any other benefit you prefer, please let me know. And here you ask a question to identify the need. Once again, before I send you the proposal via email and you learn who we work with and why you should take the time for this conversation, please tell me, do I understand correctly that you currently have a supplier? Or do I understand correctly that you are already using such a service? I said vaguely because you need to prepare for the call and make a more precise hypothesis about who your client might already be working with or what services they might already be purchasing. If you have no idea, go to your manager, expert, and find out. Preparation for the call works and needs to be done, but let's get back to the conversation. What should you do if the client still does not respond to the identification of needs or situation and maintains an objection? Send it via email. I am not ready to talk to you. Or how to preempt this objection. Instead of the previous phrases you have heard, or after them, you can say this. I assume that you already have a supplier and you are satisfied with them. May I invite you to send the information via email? And the client will say yes or will not object. After this phrase, you ask the client, do I understand correctly that after I send it by email, you will review it? And if it is indeed interesting, you will respond to me. In other words, you restate the client's objection before they voice it. Of course, in your case, it needs to be done a bit differently. Details matter. In real life, the phrases will be different for you, but try to grasp the underlying principle. The technique of preempting objections involves naming possible client objections until they ask you themselves. So, what do you have? Tell me. The technique involves sequentially naming hypothetical objections from the client's mind until they realize that you have addressed all their possible objections, and then the client simply won't have any chances left, but it needs to be done correctly. Yes, it may seem like captaincy or arrogance, and you might think that the client could dismiss you after such phrases. But I repeat, I am ready to prove to you in a live meeting that the client will not argue or object, and that this technique will work. If it doesn't work, you can throw tomatoes. add me, and give a dislike. If you think that after breaking the ice, addressing the client's objection, and starting to identify their needs, you should explain how you work. Don't do it because you risk missing the mark. Why? Because the client might imagine it in their own way, and you might not have fully discovered it, but thought you did. But again, I will surprise you or simply state an obvious fact. No matter how many questions there are, 10, 20, 30, each one should not only be interesting, but also create an insight in the client's mind. Insight occurs when the client hears a question and thinks, wow, cool, thanks for the question. Or they say to you, oh, that's what it is. I always thought so, and you hinted it to me. Thank you. You might also wonder how many questions to ask and what kind, so as not to irritate the client. There will be separate videos on this topic. After gaining insights, trust in you will increase. The client will ask you to send a proposal and will ask questions like how much it costs, how you work, and so on. He will provoke you to talk more than he does. That is, he will ask questions and listen and evaluate you. He will try to take on an HR-like position during the interview when evaluating you as a candidate, similar to a supplier. And this is already a disadvantageous position. Therefore, if you notice this, immediately get out of such a situation. To do this, ask the client, do I understand correctly that you are currently evaluating and comparing me with your current suppliers to choose the best one? Or ask another more logical question. The main thing is that the client, by agreeing, smoothly transitions to your line of conversation and feels comfortable. All right, let's move on to the next objection. Sometimes, no matter what you do, you get the response, we don't need this. If you are not selling snow to Eskimos and you believe you have a genuinely useful product in the client's language, this objection means the following. You made us an inappropriate offer. This means you did not fully understand our needs. Otherwise, if the client's need had been properly identified, you wouldn't hear, we don't need this. Logical. Sometimes it's hard to admit that we under-identify the need, make assumptions for the client, and shift the responsibility onto them. But the client won't be able to say, we don't need this, if you have addressed their urgent and true needs and desires. So let's just acknowledge the bitter truth. Unnecessary, uninteresting, not now, means that you simply do not know your client's need. Except in cases where you don't have the appropriate product to meet this need. The need could also be a certain attitude, not just the product itself. Certain relationships, because relationships are key. For example, you know that the client needs building materials, consulting services, gifts, and more. And the client tells you they are not interested. What could that mean? What the client was really saying, between the lines, was, prove to me that you are better than what I have now. Prove that you are truly better. Build trust with me. Don't sell to me now. Help me save time, but I don't trust you. Do something to make me believe. This is what a client's objection really means. So, you were explaining, showing, asking questions, identifying needs, and he still postpones, says he is not the decision maker, that it's cheaper somewhere else, or that they buy from an old friend. This all means that there is simply not enough trust in you. Therefore, objections are a result not only of an inaccurate presentation and unmet needs, but also because the client does not trust you yet, as this is the first call or the first meeting. Therefore, it might not be worth aiming to make a sale at the first meeting. Yes, your manager or owner demands meetings. Thus, the sales system pressures salespeople for more meetings, more sales. And it makes sense, but it's a trap when a manager tries to schedule a meeting through a cold lead from the website, and the client has already forgotten where they left the request. Meanwhile, the manager is trying to send an offer, come to a meeting, invite them to a free lesson on training, and so on. Naturally, this causes objections. So, what is the solution. For example, add to the sales system that the meeting is scheduled not from the first call, but from the second or third. And this depends on the type of client, which the manager can determine during the first call. This is often called qualification. But sometimes we don't know the types or levels of client awareness, because at each of these stages, we need to communicate differently. If you open your script, you will find that 99% of it is not written down. So if you are an owner, you have no choice but to demand that the salesperson sells more and schedules more meetings. Then he burns out and you hire new employees. I hope you don't have such issues. But if everything is fine within your team, you can strengthen it even more by providing managers with a tool that allows them to preempt objections. If you are watching this video and still don't have a clear dynamic script that you can implement by tomorrow, message me personally with the word test. In the format of a free consultation, I will show you a demonstration of how this dynamic script can work, tailored to your product. My contact information is in the description below the video. Yes, I want to earn your trust and likes. Another objection that has been covered in many YouTube videos is, it's too expensive for us. I will say right away that I won't give you a clear answer now, because expensive during real estate sales is one thing. Selling complex services is expensive, that's one thing. But selling consumer electronics is completely different. But I will say one thing, to avoid hearing it's too expensive, you need to find out the client's budget and capabilities. However, don't ask them directly, what is your budget? You need to assess the client's payment capacity and do it comfortably without prying into their personal life or finances. I will explain this in detail in a separate video. It is better to refuse a non-paying capable client because, let's be honest, some clients simply cannot afford your luxury real estate or car. But if you want to befriend the client, then yes, maybe they will buy from you in a year. If you work with a long-term perspective and build relationships for a year or more, you will be able to find out what needs to happen in the client's life for them to afford your real estate or car. He will find the presentation about your product and its technical specifications on your website himself, because you have piqued his interest with your communication and deep understanding of the client. Because very often it turns out that your competitors have no understanding at all, and only something like, here's the product, are you buying it or not? We are looking for a few interested people because we don't sell to those who are not interested, as we don't pressure. That's right. But the next step is to turn an uninterested client into an interested one through gentle communication in dialogue. But there might be a trap when your sales instinct, your sales system puts pressure on you and something inside you demands. Present your product, argue your case, and convey its value. Therefore, you always maintain a balance between conveying value and identifying needs. And it is precisely on the very narrow line between these two concepts that your client's decision-making stands. The next objection you should aim to prevent is when the client says, it's too early for us to integrate your product, so the managers will not undergo training. This can happen if you, for example, sell training or consulting services, or if training is a part of your project. To avoid hearing this objection, you need to identify what stage the client is at and under what conditions they will undergo training. Because the objection, we don't need training, is a normal objection. I assume that you also don't need my training. But still, you are watching this video and sometimes even purchase the training after you build trust, test it, or receive a recommendation. Such an objection may also result from you explaining what is included in the project, the technical implementation, or how everything is set up. And you would like the client to grasp your thoughts. You have broken the sales rules again and started talking more than the client. So, to avoid objections, simply do not talk more than the client. The one who talks more receives more objections. You knew this, but for some reason, you talked more. There are still objections that clients do not mention, but they need to be highlighted and addressed. They sound like this: I don't believe you. I don't like you. And I won't tell you my urgent need because I don't want to reveal my true pains, as I'm afraid of losing face and status. These are hidden objections, which will be covered in separate videos on the channel in the future. This is everything you need to have a complete cheat sheet, guide, and reference book for handling objections. Stop. What about handling objections? No, it's just about preventing objections. Yes, I believe that the word objection will one day simply disappear from our communication because people are learning to understand each other better and will meet the need. In the meantime, leave a like on this video and subscribe. Let's bring that day closer together.